I would like to call the February 28th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair Halstead?
Here.
Commissioner Petty?
Here.
Commissioner Fikes?
Here.
Commissioner Barboza is absent. Commissioner Woodard?
Here.
Commissioner Twait?
Here.
And Vice Chair Costin is absent. You have a quorum.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Chair Fikes? I knew I'd say it wrong. I even have it written down. Commissioner
Mr. Chairman, I would
Twait.
move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Yeah, I got it wrong both ways. I called you Chair and I called you Fikes. So, all right, put that on my notes for the next time. I can have the right way to say it. All right, are there any objections to approving the consent agenda? Oops. We had a second?
We got a second.
We did have a second, yeah.
You gotta read it.
Oh, sorry. Would the clerk please read the consent agenda items in the record?
Okay, tonight you have action approval granting a home occupation permit to allow assisted living for up to 2 persons on a property located at 5743 Kenai Spur in the limited commercial LC zoning district, and that is your consent agenda.
Are there any public comments on any of the consent agenda items read by the clerk? Seeing none. Are there any objections approving this agenda or consent agenda? So hearing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved. Schedule B, scheduled public comment, we have none. Unscheduled public comment, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to anything that is not on the agenda? Seeing none. Consideration of plants, we have none. Public hearings, we have before us Resolution PZ 2024-04, granting a conditional use permit amendment to allow the use of on-street parking spaces to meet the off-street parking requirements for the Performing Arts Center. Property located at 475 Dobbin Speck Road in the Light Industrial Zoning District. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Twait?
I would move to approve Resolution PZ 2024-04.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Director Mitchell, can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Halstead. So unfortunately, both my electronics are not working, so I'm going to do this by memory. I've stared at it enough. So this resolution of PZ 2024, it is a conditional use permit amendment, and the reason for the amendment is due to changes in the plan, the building, and the site of not really being developable with the high water table. The location of the building has been relocated, and then therefore the parking area has been reduced. And with that being said, the parking requirement for this use requires 48 parking spaces. They're providing 18 on site. Current use is vacant, but your commission approved this last year in January under PZ 2023-01 for the Performing Arts Theater, and it's zoned light industrial, land use plan designation is industrial. The only thing I will point out that at the time when your commission reviewed this, it was still going through a preliminary plat that obviously has been finalized, and now rather than being approximately 2 acres, it's 1.91 acres, and now it has a new address. Previous CUP is 450 Marathon. So I just want to point out some changes from the previous resolutions. Surrounding uses is the city facilities to the north. You have the dog park to the south. You have vacant land to the west now. And then the east, you have additional city facilities. So in your packet, you have their plans. They're site plan, and then the site plan showing the on-street parking off of Dobbin Spect. So you can see, comparing to the previous resolution, this building has reduced approximately close to 1,000 square feet, and from over 60 parking spaces to now 18 on-site. So with parking requirements, most of the time your off-street parking is to be provided on-site. There are certain exceptions. In this case, code does allow for you to count on-street parking, or code says public parking lot. When you read the definition, it doesn't say that's a lot, it just says public parking spaces. So this on-street parking is included in that. Therefore, if you really zoom in, and I try to zoom in there, the applicant went ahead and walked with city staff to count, well, we didn't really count it, but we identified that there are striped parking spaces down Dobbin Spect. We requested that the applicant show how many parking spaces there are and identify in the darker gray shaded area the parking spaces. Those are within 300 feet. Code says, hey, you can use public parking lot or on-street parking within 300 feet. I think that's the idea is, you want it within proximity to the site, which this does. 30 of it is within 300. The other 7, a little bit over approximately 370 feet away, those should all be counted towards this part of the CUP amendment that all these on-street parking could be utilized for the Performing Arts Theater. So a little bit of how we come up with the parking is, in your packet as well, is the parking ratio. Because they have fixed seats, this is the parking ratio of 1 space per 4 seats in the principal assembly area. So if they do have a balcony, that wouldn't be included. This is really the main floor. I just want to be clear on that. So with that calculation, it comes down to a requirement of 48 parking spaces. Again, they're providing 18 on site. That leaves them with a deficit of parking spaces of 30. And there are 37 parking spaces off of Dobbin Spect on the on-street parking. So as with any conditional use permit, staff has to, or your commission must make the findings that it meets all these criteria. The first being the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter. What's being asked of you, the use has actually been already approved last year. This is really amending the parking requirement. So I don't want to go in detail on the use because it's already been approved. It's just really modifying the building layout. Yes, it could have impact by providing only 18 on site, but there is public parking street spaces nearby that isn't exclusive to anyone, and who we just say they can't use that. And other cities use this as well. You can require an applicant to build it all on site. That is a lot of concrete and asphalt and expenditure. Maybe down the road, if there's a need, the applicant could do that. But right now, they are asking that they only provide 18 on site, and that the remainder of the requirement of the 30, that they can use that space on site street parking to be counted towards that. So, economic and non-economic value of the adjoining property. Ultimately, as identified as the applicant in their notes, is that everyone else does have parking. You have the city facilities with their own individual parking. You have Beacon with their parking as well. So this could impact dog park users. I don't really know how many people, who goes there, what's their peak hours, but again, the theater's peak time would be offset with the existing uses. These will be probably in the evenings and weekends when the other surrounding uses aren't at its peak. So this is kind of offset in essence. Proposed use, it's a theater. This was already evaluated in the previous approval of a theater being allowed in this zone. So this is just about the parking. So is there adequate parking for this? Yes, if we allow them to use on-street parking for this use, they would meet that minimum requirement, 48 parking spaces. And then the 5th criteria, will it be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare? In the original design, it was only one ingress and egress to the parking lot with 67 parking spaces. Now they're providing 2. If you look at the site plan, you'll see 2 driveways into this 18 parking spaces. So now you have a through and through lot. In essence, I would say that's an improvement for circulations, so you can drive through and not just all have a bottleneck effect through one driveway. That's a lot of parking. So criteria 6, staff doesn't find that there's additional criteria or conditions that need to be placed on this CUP amendment request. Of course, if your commission find that there is necessary conditions that you want to place, it will be under criteria 6, and you would just need to provide the reasons why. So staff is recommending that your commission approve this resolution, and it's really amending the CUP to use the on-street parking space along Dobbins Beck Road to meet the minimum off-street parking requirements for the Performing Arts Center. I did add this next step just to have you understand what the next steps would be. If you approve this request, a landscape plan and site plan building permit may be issued with the reduced off-street parking spaces. If you deny this request, the applicant must move forward with the original plan or a similar plan that provides all of the required parking spaces on the subject property. So this concludes staff's presentation, and happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We can now hear the applicant's presentation, if there is one.
Hi, I'm Chris Parker with K&A Design Studios, architect for the project. We didn't really provide necessarily a presentation, but we're here to answer any questions you may have. If you guys have any detailed questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public? I don't see, so just hang out right there. We might have a couple questions for you. So seeing no other public comments, we'll close it and bring it back to we'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have discussion from the commission? Ms. Woodard.
Went away. This is all based on the seats in there, which would be the audience. Where do you intend for the people, the numerous number of people that are performing to park?
Yeah, so I think that whole tabulation that the city provides is based on, the whole theater, not for audience members and the staff. So it's included together. So, and just to be clear, we would have built out the 60-some spaces if at all possible but with budget constraints, that's really why we are pushing to go this way. If the funding was all there and, the site didn't cost as much to develop, we would be, moving forward with that plan. That was our initial plan, but with the high water table, it definitely, this specific site has a lot of impacts due to that, so.
Commissioner Petty.
So, because of the water table, a gravel pad could not be put adjacent to that building that would accommodate parking spaces in that space?
It's still possible, it's just the increased cost. So because the water table's so high, we have to dig down essentially into the water table and bring back up fill, like 3 extra feet of fill. So that's the added cost, is to get that elevation.
Is there an estimate of what that added cost is, sir?
Yeah, I believe it was like $500,000 for the additional. So that's kind of the showstopper there. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Twait.
So I'm looking at the site plan, and it shows a driveway approach to the pond to the south of your site. There also, I believe, is an approach to the dog park. So I don't know, is that come into play as far as the parking spaces go? Are we eliminating any of those, or because we're just including that whole area there? I'm just wondering if there's going to be a few less parking spaces with that approach to the dog park.
Yeah, we're not trying to modify any parking spaces, any existing parking spaces that are there currently on street. We're not proposing to modify any of those. So just utilizing what's there. We're adding 2 driveways into the new facility for the theater.
Yeah, I'm talking like specifically in front of the dog park pavilion, there's a driveway approach that goes down to that. Are those parking spaces included? Like I said, I don't see an approach to that. I see the one for the pond south of that. I'm just curious, like I said, I'm just trying to make sure that when it comes right down to it, you've got enough spaces there.
Sorry.
And maybe
I
Ms.
think she's
Mitchell can
trying to
answer that for me.
communicate.
Does Miss, you have an answer for that?
Yes, I do. Thank
Okay.
you. Commissioners, wait, to answer your question, you're right to point that out, that they're not showing that drive approach to the dog park. I do believe the excess 7 parkings to the south would accommodate that to kind of offset what you're talking about, the driveway. Then that means there still would be at least minimum 30 parking spaces to support the theater and still help them meet their minimum requirements.
So you're talking about the 7 that aren't highlighted in the gray, the ones below those?
Correct. So originally, when I interpret this code, I interpret it as all parking spaces need to be within 300 feet, but that's impossible because if you're talking about a parking structure, you can't just count the ones that are within 300 feet. You would say all parking spaces within the building structure should be available for that use. And so for me, majority of these on-street parking of this lot falls within 300. I'm not going to say only the first 30 from the top are being used by the theater. I know people are going to use the remaining 7 for this use. So I'm not being exclusive in that sense. And to be clear, this is not saying these parking spaces are for the theater itself. It's just helping this use to meet their minimum off-street. And we allow this in shopping centers where they have shared agreements. But that's usually between private owners. This is because it's public. We can just say, hey, due to the offset of such, we can allow you to use these on-street parking, public on-street parking for your use.
And since you're speaking right now, maybe we could close the public hearing, I guess, or I guess we already have. Is there any, since it is public parking spaces again, there's no designated parking spaces for the dog park, so we're not like double parking them necessarily, correct?
Thank you, Commissioner Twait. Correct. You're correct to make that statement.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Petty?
For Ms. Mitchell, is there any designation of no parking around the corner of that other street? So could that on-street parking be utilized as well there?
Are we talking about the north corner as you turn on
Yes.
Dobbins back?
Yes.
They potentially could use that in the future if they wanted to add it, because they're using existing, which doesn't put any expense.
Okay.
And if, down the road, if we say, hey, your use is having impact to the surrounding, we could come back and ask them to amend their CUP and add those on-street parking and work with the city on that. Since there's at least 215 linear feet, there still can add some spaces there.
Any other comments? Okay, if discussion is complete, can we call for the vote?
Commissioner Fikes?
Yes.
Commissioner Twait?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Petty?
Yes.
Chair Halstead?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, please note there is a 15-day period that an aggrieved party can file an appeal with the clerk's office. And that moves us to unfinished business. We have none. New business we've already taken care of, so do not talk about it. We have a discussion action, annual work plan for Planning and Zoning Commission. Director Mitchell, can we have your staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Halstead. So, as you may recall, that there's been like a committee review of a work plan to bring forth to council to approve a work plan for each commission and committee. Well, your commission is a quasi-judicial, and you have very explicit duties and things that we really don't need to spend time and work on a plan. So in essence, they just felt like administration thought that to be fair with everyone and be consistent, that I bring forth goals before you. These are goals that are drafted in the budget for fiscal year 2025. These were carried over from 2024. Most of them are partially achieved. I wanted to go through each one if you haven't reviewed the budget plan that was adopted last year, to go over it. And of course, if you want to add anything to it, I'm happy to add, but there's already a lot for your commission to review. As you can tell, just going through the working waterfront, that has taken a substantial amount of time between going to council, doing joint work sessions, and now, as you're aware, you're going to be having another joint work session with council on March 20th. So just know that every time we do amendments, code cleanups, policy updates, they do take time. As much as I would like to add everything under the sun, we got to really focus on the priorities and decide which ones we really want to focus on, because I would love to make goals and achieve them. So practice and budget goals as we carry over last year's, and so these 5 that are before you are carried over from fiscal year 2024. The first one, implement a one-stop shop, a customer-oriented and streamlined approach to assisting customers through their development processes, including plan submittals, permits, planning projects, violations, and development record. Partially achieved, I started a pre-application process, not just for CUPs, but for all development process. Meaning, I'm becoming a project manager. They're one individual point of contact when they're working through a conceptual plan, working through a building permit plan. I have bi-weekly meetings with the fire marshal, building official, and the public works director. We look at all plans that come through, whether they're submitted, conceptual questions that I can't answer right away, instead of just being reactive and trying to answer each question as they come. I've designated every other week. We sit down, we answer all of it, and I'll give people a call back. And so I know we can further implement this one-stop shop through, for example, what some of your commissioners saw tonight with the GIS and projecting CUPs, what's been approved. I can project the same thing for building permits, what's in process, what's the current status. We have some resources that we can utilize to project these in, digitize them, and make them readily accessible. So that's kind of where we're at with that goal. Any questions about goal 1? Any revisions, adds, omit, comments? And if you do later, you can let me know. Number 2, generate an ongoing list of code amendments that are necessary to reflect current practice, clarify sections of the zoning or Kenai municipal codes, maintain consistency with relevant state and/or federal regulations, and promote good planning techniques and principles for implementing adopted plans and codes to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the city's planning and zoning. Update code as well periodically to correct the issues that have been identified and are included on the list. So we haven't gone through any of these really. These have been carried over for several years, I believe. I think sign code has been brought up almost a decade ago, if I'm looking at minutes. And conditional use permit land use table. That's something that why I've created a map is so that I can start working on generating some recommendations to your commission to consider. So it was important to compile that data. I added on landscaping and site plan regulations because our code is too vague. There's really, our standard, if I can just be very blunt with you, it just says the first 10 feet of a property along a right-of-way is to be dedicated to landscaping. And it says to be shrubs and trees. It doesn't say parameters of like 1 tree every 20 feet, shrubs to be certain thickness, certain height. These are what other cities have is 1 tree every 30. And obviously if there's utility boxes in the way, we accommodate to that. But that's the thing is, if you don't tell them how many they need, they're going to give you the bare minimum, right? And sometimes that's okay, but in this sense, I believe in landscaping is very important to the aesthetics of the city. So I really want to improve this code if we want to start moving forward on seeing less concrete and more greenscaping. So, and this is consistent with actions taken by council with our storefront and streetscape improvement grants. So I think this is in line with what the city is trying to accomplish. So I've added that. Any questions about this? I know we met about the comp plan amendment. One of the issues that was brought up was split zoning. I wanted to clean up the map. I had my admin assistant go through the zoning map and identify all the split zoning, and we're trying to determine which ones need to be corrected, that it must have been a typo or error on city staff side. We've identified a few, and I know maybe the general thought process is we don't like split zoning, but sometimes it works. And actually, no one has brought it up in the waterfront rezone. Because if you look at it, the boat launch is split zoning. The part where the existing boat launch is, it's going to be the new working waterfront. But to the south is conservation, because there's nothing. It is all wetlands to the south. That is where split zoning works best. It's because it's designated as wetland. We're not going to see improvement. Why zone it something? And if you look at our zoning map, most of the wetlands over there are zoned rural residential right now. It doesn't make sense. So that's a good example of where split zoning works, but for the most part, yes, it is preferred that we don't have split zoning because it does make it challenging from a development perspective of how setbacks are applied. It's not impossible, it's not preferred. So we are working on drafting previous meetings of directions you've given staff. I'm just working on compiling that data to bring forth so that it's not just, let's do this. I want to back it up with, hey, this is what the trend has been, history of decisions made, and bring forth a code that I hope that we don't have to go back constantly to amend, that we can move forward and feel good about it and it works, and hopefully simplify it in a lot of ways. Any questions? Anything to add? You can say, hey, sign code can wait, or not. Or you can say conditional land use paper. I don't know. I'm just giving you ideas. I'm open to your feedback.
Commissioner Petty?
Thank you for bringing those unique points specifically to our attention. And I think they're all very worthy goals, and I'm so very thankful that the sign code section is going to be addressed. It's long overdue, and I would like to see some consistency to maintain our, enhance the beauty of our city as we grow and move forward.
Thank you for the comment. I actually have a trivia question for your commission. I like this meeting. Is there regulations for wall sign in the city of Kenai?
Wall sign?
Yeah. Do we restrict signs, wall signs? So signs that you see in the facade?
Of the building?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm trying to get a majority answer.
I think we do.
I would say no.
I need a moment to think.
Okay. I'll give
Wasn't
you-
there a recent example when Odyssey went in? Odyssey Clinic over there?
That's a pole sign, so we're talking about actually on the building, a wall
But
sign.
I recall during that discussion, though, because the pole they needed, they wanted, but there was discussion, why didn't you just put it on the side of the building? That's how I remembered it.
Yes, so they can still put it on the wall, but the question is, do we have rules for it? Do we restrict the size, square footage?
I will have to say I do not know, and I'd have to research it, so.
Okay. All right, I will give you the answer, because I thought there are rules that applies, but reviewing past decisions made by staff consistently in building permits and planning reviews, wall signs have zero restriction. There's no limitation. It may be a reason why you don't see consistency. you'll see a strip mall. One's very large, has square footage probably double the size of the one next door. I was surprised because I was reviewing Home Depot and someone was doing their due diligence, and in that sign packet, it confirmed with staff's note, wall signs are not restricted. So, and if you do read our code, usually it says, hey, you can have a sign to this amount. It's usually referring to a pole sign, a monument sign. Nothing is explicit about a wall sign. You still need to get a permit if you have electrical work. Don't get me wrong. But the question is, are there size limitation? No. That is a shock to me in my time doing this, but definitely there's a sense of urgency. To be honest, I didn't think so much, but when I saw that, I was like, we're leaving it on the list. So, thank you for partaking in my trivia. Anything else to goal number 2 before I hop on to the next one?
Comment on, I think the gal that was here before you had done quite a bit of work on that sign code ordinance. Was any of that retained, or are you starting all over? Or do you have a head start on that at all?
Thank you, Chair Halstead. So on my desk before my first day, it was notes from Ryan. I believe you guys were looking at sign codes during his time. Are they good notes? I don't think so. It's just a packet of printouts. There really aren't notes to go off of. So, either I try to make sense of what has been done or just kind of start fresh. And I've been to the Sign Expo. I've been at cities where they do master signs for a certain shopping center to maintain consistency. So when you're in a shopping center, there's size and where it's located is consistent. Or where a shopping center has 5 or more, it says you need a master sign. And the master sign will then say, for your strip, these are your parameters. They don't ever have to deviate and follow city's code. That allows them to still, in essence, it's like a PUD for signs. There's different ways to go about it. It's just, I think if you can start looking at the sign code or think about certain signs that you don't want. I had a question about those sign poles that kind of, I don't even know, kind of almost like a flashy sign. I think there's one at your site.
Flashy sign.
The fabric sign, I think. I don't know. What are those
Curtis.
called? What kind of
The
sign? Like a
flag?
flashing.
Or the blow-up guy.
It must be the flag sign. The longer ones. Code is unclear on that. Yeah. There's a lot of sign types. We don't want to get too specific, but we want to ask ourselves what we want to allow, how many we want to allow, where we want to allow it. And so these are things that I asked your commission to start thinking about when you're driving through, to think about and give me your comments, and I would compile it as I work through really analyzing our sign code and obviously against federal case studies that have been done and decisions made where, we can't, what's written on there, we have no control over. So our sign code is definitely needs to be updated for many reasons. But those are the only notes I have, Chair Halstead.
All right, thank you.
All right. Goal 3, implement an effective performance measure to allow for comparison to be made to enable performance improvements. For example, 1, application processing time, completeness review, technical review, applicant resubmittal. B, review time goals, number of days, and C, customer inquiries. Why I believe in data is because if I'm receiving I'm trying to think. Customer inquiries, walk-ins. What kind of walk-in questions am I getting? Or I'm getting calls of a certain inquiry, and this is telling me I should probably create a map that is readily available. If I'm getting 75% is just literally zoning questions, is my map where I'm locating on the website not easy to find, you know? These are things that can help me figure out what do I need to adjust. Does it mean I need to do better brochures, better materials, education, or are we not providing it where it's easily accessible? And I have discovered a lot of it. And we started to clean up our web page, the planning's web page. It used to be like 8 menu bars on the side. We consolidated because it says comp plan, hazard mitigation plan, and then it says something else. We just combine it to plans and policies, one place. You know, I've learned when I manage web pages for other cities, like people don't like to scroll more than 3 scrolls. They don't want to have to click more than 5 clicks. I'm trying to implement that in our website. And if you look at our webpage now, where we used to compile our conditional use permit applications from 2024, it just would be a link to the application. I created a JS map now. So the CUP that you saw tonight, it automatically pops to that JS map. And you can click on it, you can see what's being requested, and you'll get access to the resolution once it's approved. Now in one place, really easy to navigate. So why performance or data is important to me, it allows me to know where I can improve. And so this is my goal for my department. Review time is important as well, is, you know, the idea of business running. Well, what does that mean? Are they waiting 90 days for a CUP? You know, I want to provide the raw data because some people like, you know, we're not being business friendly. Well, what does that mean? Well, your process. Well, we're reduced it down from 90 to 30. I think that's actually improvement, right? And I think data can now back it up. So now when people say that, maybe that's a few years ago, but I can show you data today. And they'll be like, oh, wow. So I like data for that reason as well. So anything that you think that could be monitored, compiled, please let me know. These are things that I have found to be effective in the day-to-day stuff that I do.
On the application processing time, is there anything in there as far as the applicant being a willing and able-bodied participant to show up? So each time these guys come in and have an application and it comes before us, in the past, it's just been talked about that maybe that would be a part of the process to encourage them to participate, because not everybody, they fill out an application, they throw it in front of the planning commission, and then they wish for the best, and if anybody has any questions, they're just not available. So I guess my question to you is you're adopting and streamlining this process. Is that a discussion that you have with the applicants, or is that a requirement moving forward, or where does that fall?
So code right now requires them to be present, and if they're not, and I think we just went over this during our work session.
That would be why.
I guess I should test the commissioners that were here. Do they remember?
Is this a trivia question again?
Yes.
You can see them behind the
So code says that if the applicant or representative is not present at the scheduled public hearing and has not provided reasonable timely notice of unavailability to the planning department or commission, the application will be dismissed by the commission without a public hearing, and the applicant may reapply at any time after paying a new fee. And I will address that a little bit more, that during our discussion at the work session, that we want to go ahead and remove that they must reapply and any time after paying a new fee. Because how about if it's something that is a legitimate excuse, and then you just say, hey, we're going to double charge you another fee, and now you have to reapply. Yeah, it is best to just table or postpone, you know, see what the applicant's rationale is and give them the opportunity. I mean, I don't think it's reasonable to ask someone to pay another fee just because they missed a meeting. But right now, yes, code requires the applicant or representative to be present.
All righty then, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else under goal 3 that we want to discuss? Okay, I'll move on to 4, review, update, or implement the following adopted plans and policies. So we did do a review of the comp plan, the historic preservation plan. We haven't done the hazard mitigation plan because that is set to expire January 2025. And I was able to get a grant through the state in collaboration with FEMA that they will provide the consulting service and the technical assistant, as well as paying 100% of the cost to update our hazard mitigation plan. Yes.
Do we have any type of oversight once they put it together to approve what they have dictated to us?
Yes. So we come up with our, well, it depends. If we want to hire a consultant, we can use them as a free resource, or in the past, the last time we did it, we hired a consultant to do it, and we kind of lead it. Obviously, they have to meet FEMA standards of certain provisions and verbiage that has to be in there for them to approve. But, I mean, it's our plan. We're going to be looking at it at this level and then bringing it forth to council for approval.
Okay, thank you.
So while we've reviewed the historic preservation plan, Imagine Kenai comp plan, again, a lot of this just takes a lot of time to compile and bring forth for a good public engagement. Like I said, I'm working on looking at all the zoning map and then determining with our land management plan. It's one of the recommendation in the land management plan that we look at zoning and update it accordingly to be consistent with the land use plan. And now I have to make it also consistent with the comp plan. So there's a lot of reviews and overlaps. So I wish it's like, oh yeah, we'll bring forth something to your commission. It's all in the works. It just takes time. One thing I have continued to have discussion is about our historic district. I think maybe it's another discussion, but right now the town site historic district is a very wide area that covers a little bit beyond the core of where the landmark site is. When you have, and maybe some of you know or some of you don't, when it comes to this town historic site, pretty much anything you do to exterior is subject to scrutiny because you're in a town historic site. This sometimes discourages people to do improvements, right? Because we don't want to go through the public hearing just to do an alteration, an improvement to the facade. You're telling me I have to go through a public hearing and then do a building permit? That's a lot. I think if we want to preserve what we know as Old Town, with the improvement of the tribe, that's kind of modernized that whole center, is we shrink down the historic area to where the cemetery, the landmark site is, and really have strict development standards in terms of bulk and size and scale, right? Because you want to maintain that neighborhood feel. Because if you allow a modern building to be taller, you're hiding all this historic area behind buildings. And so I would rather us scale down on the historic site to an area we see meets that, and then create up with standards of objective standards of what we want to see. This is the max size of this area because it's consistent at the time, what makes this significant. And that's just the only way to preserve this area. Otherwise, you let developers come in and do what they want, and it's always about, it's a business, it's an investment. So I get it. That is what I would like to propose, but I definitely think there's more discussions to have with your commission, but that's my vision of if we want to maintain this area and preserve the uniqueness of it, is to scale it down and protect what's existing. Any comments on number 4 before I move on to number 5, or comments about what I just said about the town historic district, town site historic district? All right. 5, one that we're working on right now, the waterfront feasibility study implementation, is the rezone, and ordinance 3391 on the comp plan amendment has been enacted, so that will come in effect 30 days from that decision, and we're still working on the rezoning or adding of a new zoning district, so that's still in progress. And again, if you can please make time to attend the joint work session on March 20th with the City Council. It's really to go over it, but really to discuss your amendments and to have that conversation. So I highly encourage your commission to be present if possible. Other than that, these are my goals for your commission and for the department. If you want to add anything else to it for the fiscal year, please let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate your attention.
Commissioner Twait?
Oh, you got it right. So I'll keep doing that till you get it right. Now you got it. This is, I'm not completely done with the therapy from the last comp plan, but I'm just curious. So it says 2030, so is that when we are gonna be tasked with updating it again, or just looking out? I know it seemed like it went on, and then we started it back over again, kind of, and finished it, but when do we, if it is 2030, when, I know it's not in 2025, we have to worry about it fiscal year 2025, but when do we start looking at that in greater depth?
That is a very good question, Commissioner Twait. And I would say with the amount of staffing, I would say 3 years before 2030 at a minimum. Just the amount of time to go through every corridor of the city, I'd rather not rush it. I'd rather have a plan of, the first quarter we talk about certain maybe commercial areas we want to see, corridor centers, because comp plan says centers, we want to see more centers. I have no idea what area we're talking about where we want to see centers. It's not very clear in the comp plan. We have the goal to say we want to see it, but I don't see it on the zoning map. So I would say minimum 3 years, ideally in 4 years with the plan to kind of what it looks like to piecemeal it over a 2-year time span with the amount of public engagement.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Which leads us to reports, which is Director Mitchell.
Thank you. Some of you met Brandon tonight. Brandon, he's the new planning technician. He started this week. So we're just really going over the basic of just planning and zoning, and he's doing a lot of online training for HR and IT. So hopefully it doesn't burn him out already, but he was here tonight for the work session since I thought it would be a good opportunity to go learn about the conditional use. Big thing that I'm excited to share is that you all should receive an email with a training. It's from Plan Edison. It's a planning website that has great courses. I signed you all up for the Planning Commission training. It's 10 classes, an hour each, so 10 hours of your time. You get a certificate from Michigan University. I just want to have us all on the same page and kind of go back to the basics, and then I'm going to require this of every new commissioner. So hopefully you'll just do it this one time. You get the certificate and you're good. And then for budget-wise, I will plan to set aside 2 subscriptions every year with the new commissioners coming in. So with that being said, you will receive instructions to sign and I think create a password. It's not a spam or a scam. Please create your user password, because I recognize we set aside, money for APA offsite. It's not really an ideal time that I can see your commission going. So I was trying to find alternative solutions to training, and this was one that was highly recommended from other cities that I worked for. So if you can please, you have a year. Please don't take a year. I'm doing it myself, so I know exactly what you're going through. So please sign up and start taking these classes. And when you're completed, I will know because I am the account manager on these. So I will know who's behind. With that being said, any feedback on it, whether it's useful, whether we want to continue this for new commissioners. Otherwise, I can always look for other resources. But that is an email that you should have in your inbox, your work inbox. My mind is going to blank. I've been working on budget and just trying to get into the ring of building permit stuff. So I really don't have much unless your commission have questions for me. Thank you.
Okay, which leads to my report, and I don't have much to say other than I just appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. Ms. Mitchell, I think you're definitely making great strides. I think we've all been, at one point or another, commented just how impressed we are with the amount of work that you've done and continue to get done. So, as much as I don't like looking at that sign code, I look forward to seeing that come into play. And thank you, Ms. Thibodeau, for keeping me on track. Even though you've written very specific instructions, I still have creative ways to go off task here. So I appreciate everyone's efforts here. And that is it for me, which leads us to Kenai Borough Planning. Commissioner Fikes.
Alrighty, we had a barn burner on Monday. There was a whole lot of plats, and a lot of them fell on the Soldotna Airport lease, and so there was a lot of tug and pull, so we didn't start on time. We didn't wrap up till darn near midnight, so let's see what we had. We had 4 of the plats, Bedarkie Creek, Gateway Subdivision, Soldotna Airport leases, Strawberry Acres, they were all passed after much discussion. And then, let's see, we got into a public hearing authorizing a negotiated lease with Davis Block Concrete for the Cooper Landing area. And so what that looks like, if you're familiar with going over the bridge, to the right is the post office for Cooper's Landing, and that's Snug Harbor Road. And so Davis Block is hoping to have a site down there midway on the right. And I'm not real familiar with it, but they mentioned their senior center is down that direction. So it is near it, and what they want to do is they want to bring in trucks from Kenai and deposit supplies, and they want to batch concrete. And it's going to be a 5-year project, and so then there was quite a bit of discussion and concern about traffic, obviously, side dumps, belly dumps. But it is not to be considered the same as what you might think of for gravel and other material sites extractions. It's strictly coming from the port in Anchorage and then coming from Kenai, and then they're doing the mixing there, or the pour they call it, as needed. So he's telling us that there could be on any given day 5, maybe 10 trucks a week kind of thing, so maybe 1 a day. And so it's not going to be hopefully impacting things too much, because like I say, that was the greatest concern with foot traffic and then also dip netting and whatnot. But he took everybody's concerns in stride, and at the end of it, everybody felt comfortable with a local having the contract, that it would be adhered to and considered, because, you know, he's got skin in the game. He lives here. So that one ultimately passed, and then we scooted on to a street naming resolution in the Nikiski area, and that was renaming Aspen Court to Aspen Lane. It was a continuation, so it was just kind of a housekeeping measure, and so it made sense to continue that name. And that now becomes Aspen Lane instead of Aspen Court. So that was approved. And then we went into the barn burner of the night, conditional use permit for a footbridge in the Castaway HOA subdivision, which is down off of Shahansky by Porter Road. And there is a island apparently out there, and there are some cabins apparently on these that people actually buy, and I can only imagine what their expectation is, but they have a driveway now, and that bridge and that driveway at some point, it's anticipated in 1 year to 2 years, is going to be sucked under and no longer passable. So they're looking at the footbridge to help get access off and onto the island, and so there was a lot of discussion with the HOA, and this was kind of a unique fact that was brought up in the discussion. It was a applicant who has a cabin on the island that is looking to get greater access because they're not able to use the road one or something. And so they had a professional surveyor, professional engineer go do all these drawings and constructions and plans, and brought them all to the River Center and crossed all their Ts, dotted their Is, did the application, went and talked to the HOA, and it's a association of, I believe, like 150 folks, and they got at least 2 or 3 people on the specific board, and they said, sure, go for it. Apparently, the president of the association, that footbridge drops right by his bedroom window. So he is of the NIMBY opinion, not in my backyard. And so we got to listen to that tug of war back and forth, but what was really cool was legal just nipped it right in the butt and said, you know what, anybody can go and get an application. And you, as a board or a commission, you can approve it, but that does not give carte blanche to the applicant to just go build. So even though the commission can approve or not approve it, that doesn't mean it'll necessarily be built. So we ultimately approved it, but the burden is on the applicant to go get the rest of the Ts and the Is dotted and whatnot. So that was kind of an interesting process, because this is the second go-around that we had gotten this, and we got kind of lost in the weeds of the discussion when the association can or can't do. So it was huge to have that at the 11 o'clock hour for legal to jump in. So that pushed us into a utility easement. That one was kind of straightforward with McLean. And this one was in Soldotna, and this was over by the ACS garage, I believe, in the back area there. And they were just looking to vacate a portion of that easement, and so that was pretty much a non-issue, and that was passed. And then that pushed us into another one, but again, we were at the midnight hour, and so pretty much all the applicants had fallen off the radar on the Zoom. And so this one was in the Homer Diamond Ridge area. And so what these folks were looking to do was to take a giant chunk of land, and if I remember it right, I think there was almost like 60 or 70 lots that were going to be developed, and there was a airstrip. But the airstrip was recognized by the FAA, utilized in the past, but it was not maintained at this point. And so these folks zeroed in on it and wanted to develop it and had a dedicated plan and everything put forward. But there was, again, not in my backyard, folks, person at the end of the runway, per se. And they're like, well, were you not aware when you purchased the land that this was recognized by FAA and everything? Did you not do your due research? So there's a little tug and forth, back and forth, but there was a whole lot of people, and it made sense in the aviation community. We heard a lot of testimony about folks who said that there just isn't really a lot of places to park your plane. And they talked about the airport in Soldotna and how some of the folks have had corrosion. One guy lost pretty much his whole aircraft just because of the corrosion of having it parked outside. And so that was a valid point for pursuing development and stuff. So fortunately, we had a lot of people that were pilots in the audience, so we were able to get that one approved. And then, let's see, I think we scooted on to an exception request to grant lot dimensions. Why did we do that one? I think we moved, no, okay. We moved on to director's comments at that point. And I think he was talking about finally bringing forth the material site findings for their new committee and to see what that might look like for the summer construction. And then we kind of wrapped it up after that because we were pretty much all exhausted.
Thank you very much. City Council Liaison, Councilmember Dothit, may we have your report, please?
Give me just a second, I gotta pull it up. My phone timed out after that extensive report. Sounded like a painful meeting there. All right, so we did as we already discussed, the comprehensive plan use map. That got moved on, and then we've postponed the working waterfront till the 20th meeting, where we're gonna have a work session with planning and zoning. Animal shelter donations, we accepted just less than $3,000. I think it's $2,600 worth of donations roughly. These are all just mostly private parties and individuals that had donated, so we were able to get like 2,600 and some change, I believe is what it was, donated to the animal shelter. Some reallocation of funds for streetlight repair projects to be able to allow them to continue on. There's some stuff that's kind of carried over, and they're just waiting on weather to be able to finish them up. There is more plans in the future to do a lot more streetlight repairs around the city, so it's going to be a hot topic here, I'm sure. It always is, but it sounds like we're getting some stuff done there. Then there was for an ordinance, there was it was two parts. One for allowing a policy that would allow the city to be able to advertise public meetings and also when our elections are on the radio. That was a policy, and then it also was two parts. It was for appropriating funds to do that said advertising and also allow city staff to advertise other things within the city. And that got voted down 5-2 on that one. So we'll see. I'm not giving up on it, so we'll see what we can do with that. A new security guards awarded a contract for that. And then the building official reclassification got postponed again to wait for that position. Hopefully they had some applicants. They were doing interviews. They wanted to wait till they got the interviews done before they finalized on that reclassification. I haven't heard the update, but I know they had a few applicants that were qualified, so I'm not sure what the status is on that. We'll probably find out at the next meeting. And then there was the sign on the Odyssey Family Medical special use permit for being able to have their sign on the city lot. A little bit of discussion on that, but it got ultimately approved, so they'll be able to have that going. And then just the work session, and then there's a work session coming up where we're going to have discuss the possibility and the need of at least getting the plan started for a police and fire station possibility in the future. So we'll be the council's going to have a work session about that with the police chief and the fire chief and discuss their needs and their hopes and aspirations as to what they want to see in the future, to see if we can get the funding approved to start getting those plans started and making a game plan forward. It's something that's been on the back burner for many, many years, and it's probably one of the older, more utilized buildings in the city. So be interested to see how that work session goes and what comes of that. And that's about it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Commissioner Twain?
For either of you, and possibly Director Mitchell, without a building official at the moment, who's doing plan reviews and issuing permits, and how long is it taking? I've got a couple I'm getting ready to deliver if I need to get them in early.
So right now, all commercial plans are commercial plans that require a licensed plan examiner to review. It's going to be forwarded to the state. So the state actually will be reviewing it. The applicant will be sending it directly to the state and paying those fees. I believe their turnaround time is 20 days, but I don't
How about
know.
residential ones?
Residential, I believe we're going to do it in-house because they don't, if triplex or less is residential. So those are going to be done in-house. And usually with those, residential is 10 days. And then in terms of inspection, our fire marshal is conducting all the building inspection in the meantime, since he is qualified with the Fire Inspector 1 certification.
Anyone else? All right, additional public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment? I see nobody. Next meeting attendance notification is March 13th. Is there anyone planning to be absent or attending remotely?
I will be absent and will not be attending remotely, and I will not be at the work session on March the 20th either.
We're just going to assign you extra online classes then.
I've already done them. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right. Commission comments and questions. Commissioner Woodard.
Well, the work session was nice. I like the ideas that you've put forth and condensing and simplifying, and I found it very helpful.
Commissioner Tweet.
I would just offer to be Commissioner Fikes and Chairman Halstead's accountability partners in the future for work sessions if they need to be reminded. And other than that, I have nothing.
Commissioner Petty.
Yes, I appreciate all the updates that Ms. Mitchell brought forth for our conditional use permits, which will make the whole process more user-friendly for everyone in our community and make Kenai a wonderful place to come and do business. Also, I'm very thankful that we approved the parking exception for our children's theater here in our community and look forward to seeing groundbreaking on that. Thank you.
Commissioner Fikes.
All good.
All right, and that's me. So I appreciate Commissioner Tweet's offer to come pick us up at our homes is what it sounded like. So I'm sure we've got our address. Yeah, I think I've said all I need to say. So pending items, we have none. There being no other business before this body, the meeting is adjourned.